Hi friends, so how are you all? So I'm back with one more new session, new video for this particular historical background of the Indian Constitution. So this is a part 8 video for this particular session. And I'm Dr. Sashi Prabha who is presenting you this particular course. Moving on, so we are talking about the this is the content which I have given. We have completed successfully the introduction part and the company's rule have been completed. Now we are talking about the Crown's rule, and another Crown's rule we have successfully completed the Government of India Act of 1858. We have completely completed this company's rule ring. Please go back to my previous videos where I have given a detailed description about the whole chapter 2, that is the company's rule. And in the last session, we discussed about the Indian Council Act of 1861. We are having three Indian Council Acts, that is 1861, 92 and 1909. Of these, we have completed the first one, that is the Indian Council Act of 1861, and in this session we will discuss about the remaining two Indian Council Acts, that is 1892 and the Indian Council Act of 1909. So this is the whole content which I assured you that I will complete in all my videos. So moving on, so we are talking about the Crown's rule. So these are the different acts which are present under the Crown's rule. As I said before, under this we have completed the Government of India Act, the first two one, the Government of India Act of 1858 and the Indian Council Act of 1861 have been completed. And now in this video, we will discuss about the two acts, that is the Indian Council Act of 1892 and Indian Council Act of 1909. Right, moving on. So first let us discuss about this Indian Council Act of 1892. So let's talk about the important features of this Indian Council Act of 18. Uh, it's not 61, it is 92. Please excuse me for that. Just make a correction of it. So under this, the first one is the here is a first characteristic feature. This act gave the Legislative Council the power of discussing the budget and addressing questions to the executive. Let me explain you this point. The Indians in the Legislative Council were introduced during which act? During the Indian Council Act of 1861. Till then, no Indians were allowed to be in the Legislative Council. So in 1861, this I have explained you in the previous video already. So in 1861, the Viceroy was given a power to select or nominate an Indians for the Legislative Council. But they do not have many powers. The powers were limited. But during this Indian Council Act of 1892, the legislative budget, the Legislative Council were given the powers to discuss on the budget, a little improvement. Okay, and they have the power to pose a question if they have any. Okay, but remember, only one question they can ask. They can ask or they can pose a question of only one question. And even for today in the parliament, the legislative councils, they will ask questions whenever they have doubts regarding the budget, and they have to be answered. So when this system of posing a question by the Legislative Council members were introduced, which we are following even for today, is that was in Indian Council Act of 1892. Guys, please make a correction. This is the heading is not the characteristics of Indian Council Act of 1861. It is 1892. Please make sure of it. I'll make sure that this will not repeat again. Now moving on to the second characteristic feature. So what's the second characteristic feature? The act made a limited and indirect provisions for the use of election and filling up some of the non-officials. Here, the act, it introduced election for the filling up of the non-officials. But the thing is, the word election was not used in this act. This act introduced elections for the filling of what? It filling for the filling of the non-official members. But the thing is, they have not used the word election. Instead of the word election, they use the word nomination. Instead of election, the word nomination was used. Nomination made on the recommendations of the central bodies. This was used. So, later on, immediately after this, we got one more act, that is the Indian Council Act of 1909. This Indian Council Act of 1909 was maintained for a very short period of time. So this is called as a shortest living act. So tomorrow you can get a question like, which is the shortest living act? The shortest living act is the Indian Council Act of 1909. And this shortest living act is also called as Morley-Minto's reform. So who is this Morley and Minto, and why we call this as Indian Council Act of 1909 as a Morley-Minto reform? Means the Minto was the then viceroy. The Morley was the secretary of the state. I told you the secretary of the state is a direct representative of the British Parliament. So Morley is having more powers than the Minto. So we got the Secretary of the State's name first and then the Viceroy. So Morley is the Secretary of the State, Minto is the Viceroy. So moving on to the rest of the characteristic features of the Indian Council Act of 1909. Under this, the first one here. This act increased the size of the legislative council, both central and the provincial. So, the number of the people that are present in the legislative council has been increased. Previously, the number of people in the legislative council used to be 60. Mainly, I'm talking about the Central Legislative Council. Previously, the number in the Central Legislative Council was 16 and it has been increased to 60 during this Morley-Minto's reform. And the number of members in the provincial legislative council were not uniform. In one provinces it will have more number, in the other provinces they will have less members. So they didn't maintain any uniform legislative council members list. Depending upon the requirements, they maintain the number. Hope you understood. This is the first point. Now, what is the first point here? The number of legislative members in the council have been increased, where both in the center as well as provinces. In the center, it has been increased to 60, but in provinces, this is not uniform. Clear? This is the first one. Moving on to the second one. Here, the legislative council members were allowed to ask the supplementary questions, move resolutions on the budget. This is one of the very important bit here. Let me explain you. In the previous Indian Council Act, that is in 1891, Indian Council Act, the legislative members were allowed to ask the question. But how many questions? Only one question they can put. But during this 1909 Indian Council Act, that is Minto's Morley reforms, the legislative members were allowed to ask the supplementary question also. Previously, they can ask only one question. Now they can go for a supplementary question. But here, the important thing is you should know the meaning of the supplementary question. What do you mean by supplementary question? Let me explain you. If anyone asks one question to anyone, poses any one question to any of them, and the answer is not satisfied. For example, you have asked one question to me, I have given an answer, but you are not satisfied with that answer. Then you can ask the second question, but it should be related to the first question. If you're not satisfied with my answer, you can ask the second question related to the first question. That is called a supplementary question. Got it? They can ask the second question, but the question should be related to the first question only. This is the meaning of the supplementary question. So, what is the second characteristic feature? The legislative council members were allowed to ask the supplementary question, and they are allowed to move the resolutions on the budget. They can move the resolutions, but the final decision will be taken by the Viceroy and the Secretary of the State. Moving on to the third feature of this act. The members were allowed to move the resolution on budget. Yes, we have discussed this point in the previous one. They are allowed to take the resolution, move the resolution on the budget, but the decision will be taken by the, they can put the proposal, but the decision will be by the Viceroy. Okay, what is the continuation it? Or on any matter of public interest, not only with the budget, they can move the resolution on any matter which is related to the public. But there is a clause here. Remember the clause, very important. But they are not supposed to involve in the matters of the armed forces and the foreign affairs. Means the powers given to these legislative council members were limited. They can move the resolution on the budget, but the final decision will be by the viceroy. But they cannot take resolution on all the matters. They can take resolution on only few matters. Few matters like armed forces and the foreign affairs will not be touched by these members. Right. So this is the third feature. Moving on to the fourth feature here. For the first time, it allowed the Association of Indians with the Executive Council of the Viceroy. See, remember here, the involvement of the Indians in the Legislative Council was done during the first Indian Council Act. Okay, in the first Indian Council Act, that is in 1861, the Indians were nominated by the Viceroy for the Executive Council, sorry, for the Legislative Council, not for the Executive Council. But during this Morley-Minto's reform or Indian Council Act of 1909, the Indians were allowed, the Association of Indians were allowed even for the Executive Council. This is an important move for the Indians. And here, Satyendra Prasad Sinha. Just remember the name here. The Satyendra Prasad Sinha is the first Indian to join the Executive Council of the Viceroy. And he is appointed as a lawmaker. Okay, he is appointed as one of the law member. Who is that person? Satyendra Prasad Sinha. So the first Indians were allowed, the Association of First Indians were allowed in the Executive Council in which act? In Indian Council Act of 1909. Got it? So in 1909, one more thing has happened which is very, very important. So let's talk about that. Introduced a system of communal representation for Muslims by accepting the concept of separate election. Here the seed was sown for the communalism, separation of religion. The fights for the religion has been started in India only because of this Minto Morley reform. So I strongly believe that. They introduced a communal representation for Muslims. They accepted the separate electorate. What it mean? What is the meaning of communal representation here? The communal representation here means the Muslim members were to be elected only by the Muslim voters, right? So we in India today, we are electing our ministers or our prime minister, whatever the elections you go for, irrespective of the religion, we can vote. Any religion can select the representative. But at that time, when they introduce the communal representation, what it means the Muslim member, for the Muslim member, only the Muslim candidates has to be voted. So this is called the communal representation. They want to divide the society on the names of the religion. This is called the divide and rule theory, which always the Britishers follow to divide us. Okay, so seeing the next point, this act legalized the communalism, and so the Lord Minto who proposed this and who accepted this, we call Lord Minto as a father of communal electorate. So who is the father of communal electorate? Lord Minto. You have to remember all these names. Like Lord Canning is a person who is considered as a father of portfolio system. We have discussed in the last video. So the father of communal electorate is Lord Minto. When was it proposed? In 1909. So according to me, this is the first step where the communalism has been started in India. Because of this communal election, the differentiation has started among the religions. The fight among the religions in India has started because of these communal elections only. And this is one of the cunning idea of the Britishers to divide our society on the name of the religion. Whatever, it so happened. So, communal elections were started in which year? In 1909. Who is considered as a father of communal electorate? It is Lord Minto. Who is Lord Minto? He is the um, Viceroy of India during 1909. Right. So that's all for today's video, guys. Thank you, guys. If you feel that the content in the video is useful to you, please rate, review, and please recommend the video, share the video to many of the people, so that many of the aspirants who are writing the competitive exams, for them it will be very useful. Right. So I'll come back with one more new video related to this historical background. So thank you, guys. Take care. Bye bye.